Hi people, it's me Anja, my pronouns are she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new recent reads video. The first book on this list is called At the End of Everything. This book is a YA science fiction thriller of sorts because it follows three characters who were left behind to die basically at the juvenile detention hope center because the girls just left them and there's a plague infecting the outside. So essentially they were left behind to die. I really like this book because I thought it was so well done and it was so awesome. I had really low expectations for this book, if I'm being honest with you, because I've read 2 books previously by this author, maybe more than that, but basically I've rated all of their previous books at least 3 stars, so I wasn't expecting to rate this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. First of all, the plot was so engaging, it was absolutely so thrilling, and it was so intriguing. Second of all, the characters were so well developed and so distinct. I also really enjoyed how the author incorporated such casual, queer, and disability representation because of the 3 main characters. One of them is non-binary and another one is autistic, so we love to see it. I also enjoyed how this author paralleled how realistic and authentic the story was. It came from a very real place, since people in detention centers and prison are often left behind or not thought of during a pandemic. You know what I mean? Anyway, this book was so excellent and it was so emotional, and I was so emotionally invested and attached to everything that was happening, both the events and the characters themselves. So with that, I would highly recommend this book because, like I said, I rated it 4 stars. The next book on this list is called Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman. This book is a YA contemporary following a young black girl who's a freshman at her new college who experiences racism and microaggressions, and she starts to wonder if standing up for herself could result in her costing her future, because sometimes when people of color rock the boat, they're the ones who end up getting drowned, even though they're not the ones who ended up building the boats to begin with. I don't know if that analogy made any sense, but basically, this book was really good and it was really awesome. This book is also a debut book, and it definitely read as a debut book, but not necessarily in the bad way. You know what I mean? This book was really good, and I ended up rating it 4 stars because the plot was so engaging and it was so thrilling, and it was absolutely so intriguing. The characters were well developed and very authentic, and this book was so good and it was so empowering. I just wish that this book was a little bit longer because I think that some things needed more development and more page time, because the ending felt like it was wrapped up very fast and almost too neatly, if that makes any sense. But anyway, I really enjoyed this book and I definitely highly recommend it, especially now for Black History Month, because I think that it's so realistic and so timely and so important and absolutely so necessary. So with that, I rated this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. The next book on this list is called Fire Becomes Her. This book is a YA historical fantasy that follows a young girl who must weigh her desire to climb the social ladder against her heart in a world where magic buys votes. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I really enjoyed this book. In fact, I rated it 5 stars because there's nothing that I would change about the story. First of all, the characters felt so realistic and so well developed and so well done, and the queer representation was so great. The main character is bisexual and aromantic, and she results in a queer platonic relationship towards the end of the book, which I really appreciated because I've never actually read a book with a QPR in it, and her love interest, her platonic love interest, is a trans masculine person, so that's wonderful. And there are also so many side queer characters, but even aside from the wonderful representation, the plot was so engaging and it was absolutely so thrilling and so awesome. The world building was fantastic and I really enjoyed it. I had somewhat low expectations for this book because the author's previous book tarnished all the stars. I retrospectively rated 3.5 stars, so I was not expecting to rate this book 5 stars because I loved every single second of it. The writing was so wonderful. The characters, like I mentioned, were so distinct and so awesome. This book is totally worth its hype and so much more. So with that, I would highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called I Must Betray You. This book is a YA historical fiction following a young boy who's being blackmailed by the secret police to be an informer in Romania in 1989. This book was so good and so well done. However, with that said, I rated this book 3 stars because if I'm being honest with you, I had mixed reviews about it. Because here's the thing, I enjoyed the setting and the plot and the world building, but the characters didn't really stand out to me, so I didn't really care about certain things that happened to them. Like, for example, the romance, I didn't really care about that, or like any of the friendships or anything like that, but I was intrigued by the setting and the world building because this time period is something that I knew nothing about beforehand, so I didn't know where the plot was going to go. Whereas when I read World War II historical fiction books, I usually have a pretty good idea of where the story is headed, since World War II is something that I learned about in school beforehand, but I knew nothing about this time period. So I do appreciate that this story was educational and it was entertaining to an extent. Like, the plot was thrilling and it was intriguing, but I will say that it was the most intriguing towards the last third of the book, but not really in the beginning and the middle, but it was intriguing enough that I didn't DNF this book. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically I rated this book 3 stars because it was good, but it was not great, and I'm not sure if honestly I recommend it, or if I really want to read more books from this author in the future, but I definitely understand her hype. So yeah, there's that. The last book on this list, and certainly not the least, is called The City Beautiful. This book is a YA historical fantasy following a young, gay, Jewish immigrant who becomes possessed by the ghost of his best friend, and it's set in 1893 against the backdrop of Chicago's World Fair. This book was so awesome, and I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad that I added this book to my TBR, even if it was for FOMO in September or October of 2021, because this was a book that everybody was talking about in September, and now I know why, because this book is so good. So first of all, the plot was so thrilling, and it was absolutely so intriguing, and it was so engaging. The characters were well developed and so distinct. The romance was so cute, and it was so awesome, and I really enjoyed it. The world building and the setting was so vivid and so well done. I really enjoyed how the author tackled the anti-Semitism that occurred in 1893 that unfortunately continues to be very rampant nowadays, because it felt like it came from a very authentic place, if that makes any sense. This book was so awesome, and it's totally worth all of its hype and so much more. So with that, I would highly recommend it, because I ended up rating this book 4 stars. So, in conclusion, my favorite book on this list was by default Fire Becomes Her, because that's the only book on this list that I rated 5 stars. And again, by default, my least favorite book on this list is I Must Betray You, which is the only book on this list that I rated 3 stars, because I rated the rest of the books in between 4 stars. So overall, February has started off to be a pretty good reading month. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below the butterfly emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!